Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is May the 6th, 2014. We're here at City Hall, 116 West Bridge Street, Granbury, Texas. We call the City Council to order. I'd like to call upon Pastor Drew Travis, pastor of the First Presbyterian Church, to lead us in our invocation. Drew?
Let us pray. God of grace and goodness, we thank you this day for the wonder of life and for the gifts that you shower upon us. God, we thank you for this world, for the warmth of your sun, the blue of your sky, for the rain that comes, and God, we pray that it does. God, remind us that we are stewards of all that you've given us, and we're stewards of one another. And the care for each one is resting in our hands also. God, remind us, too, as we gather of the great responsibility that comes with being a public servant, with serving this nation, with serving this state, with serving this community. And God, as these council members gather tonight, we do give you thanks for the privileges that we have because of where we live. And we pray that your grace be upon them this night, that they may know you near, and that wisdom might be part of each decision they make, that the goodness of this community may be upheld. God, we do thank you for the gifts that you give, for the day that you bring, for your presence at this time. Amen.
Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the Texas pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one indivisible.
At this time, I'd like to call upon Michael Smith and Dave Wilson, if you would, to read a proclamation on Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month. Go ahead and come up forward if you want. The proclamation reads, whereas today society is finding more citizens involved in motorcycling on roads of our country, and whereas a motorcyclists are roughly unprotected and much more likely to be injured or killed in a crash than other vehicle drivers. And whereas campaigns have helped inform riders and motorists alike on motorcycle safety issues to reduce motorcycle-related risks, injuries, and most of all, fatalities through a comprehensive approach to motorcycle safety. And whereas it is the responsibility of all who put themselves behind the wheel to become aware of motorcycles, regarding them with the same respect as any other vehicle traveling the highways of this country. And whereas urging all citizens of our community to become aware of the inherent danger involved in operating a motorcycle and give the operator the respect on the road that they deserve. Now therefore, I, Nan Hewlett, the mayor of the city of Granbury, Texas, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2014 Motorcycle Safety and Awareness Month in Granbury, Texas. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. At this time, the City Council normally conducts its open mic, which provides a person that wishing to address the City Council to register with the City Secretary and provide information, name and address and telephone number, and to speak and address comments to the presiding officer. At this time, we don't have anybody that has chosen to speak today at our open mic, so we will move on to the consent agenda. The first items on the consent agenda are the approval of the minutes of the council meeting for April 15, 2014, and also consider and adopt a resolution providing for amending the 2002 City of Granbury Water Conservation and Drought Contingency Program. Council, you've had an opportunity to look at the minutes, and also we discussed the contingency drought program at our last meeting. Are there any questions or concerns? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Allen, a second by Councilman Couch. Is there any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The consent agendas are approved. Our next item is a public hearing regarding a request of Mike Brown for a specific use permit to allow sales of new used autos in a heavy commercial district and consider and approve an ordinance providing for the said SUP. The property is located at the corner of Highway 377 and Sardis Boulevard. Scott, I know we've talked about this at several meetings. Can you bring us up to date on anything that's changed?
Manager.
There you go.
Little recap from the previous two public hearings. What we have is a request for an SUP to allow for those uses, namely used car sales, not allowed by right in heavy commercial. You can see the property bounded there in a dark red boundary is zoned heavy commercial. It does allow for new car sales by right, but it does not allow for some of those issues, namely used car sales, without the issuance of an SUP by council. The deliberations, to recap those, basically we originally came out of P&Z with a site plan depicting that area for used car sales, and that's labeled on your site plan in the parking area. You can see over more to the west, we have about 217 parking spaces for new car sales lots, and over to the east is more an area set aside for the used car sales activity. The previous site plan also depicted three approaches off of Sardius, one approach off of 377. That approach will be permitted by TxDOT. Really, the city doesn't have much of a say. We act more of a pass-through agency before that permit application goes to TxDOT for its authorization. During the deliberations of the site plan, there was some discussion about doing away with the northernmost drive. See if I can get to the old site plan here. There we go. That's the area with the X in it. That came from the Planning and Zoning Commission during the deliberations of the City Council. There was some consensus regarding the negation of that particular drive. After the first public hearing, there was some discussion regarding the fire inspector's involvement due to the negation of that drive in order to reconfigure the fire lane width throat coming off of the second drive off the Sardius in order to get access to the back of the building for access purposes and to get to the vault on the back of the building. You have in your staff report a memorandum from the fire inspector underscoring the necessity of that second drive and how he needs that drive to get to the back portion of the building. Also, during the deliberations of the last council meeting, there was some discussion regarding traffic calming devices along Sardius. That was put over to the traffic committee, namely the police chief, and you do have a memorandum or an email from the police chief regarding his assessment regarding traffic control, traffic calming devices. I will make a comment regarding that any directive to the traffic committee is outside the purview of the SUP. That's something that really shouldn't be borne by the SUP applicant, but if you choose to go that route, for example, put stop signs in based on the recommendation of the police chief, that's just a simple directive from the council or the city manager over to city staff in order to get that accomplished. So aside from those two issues that are inclusive in your packet as new material, Mayor, I will turn the commentary back over to you and be happy to answer questions if you have any.
Thank you, Scott. At this time, I'll open the public hearing to the public. I note that we do have a couple of citizens that would like to speak. These citizens have spoken previously. I would ask Richard Winters if you have new information, we'll hear it. If it's all the same information, then we still have it on record.
My name is Richard Winters. I live at 211 Sardius Boulevard, Granbury, Texas, 76049. One item I'd like to discuss is was sent back a couple of council meetings ago. My interpretation was it was sent back to P&Z for clarification on the delivery, whether all deliveries would come in the northern entrance off 377. I didn't hear that clarified in the last council meeting, so we're still unclear on where the deliveries are going to be coming from, whether they're going to be made off Sardius or they're going to be coming off the highway. Second thing is, I don't see anything that's been changed as far as the fence line. Is that still in the works, or has that been removed? 'Cause I didn't see anything on any of the plats or diagrams that would show a fence. And I also have still concern about the PA system that's going to be there. There's been a lot of discussion about it, but I haven't heard anything put in stone yet. It's all been just talk. And my fear is that if we don't get it addressed now and something in writing, then it's just going to be in the wind. He can do whatever he wants in the long run. This business is right on top of the homeowners, and it's not going to take much from a PA system to be, blaring in our houses. So I'm asking for something to be done now before it's been approved. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. The next one is Mr. David Southern, and here again, I know Mr. Southern spoke before. Do you have some more new information or new requests, Mr. Southern?
David Southern. I live at 226 East Pearl. I have a question on the screening fence. Will that be next to the sidewalk all the way to the northernmost exit now? That's what we talked about at the last meeting, and I was just wondering if that was still on the design. Do you know, Scott?
Let me touch on the screening real quickly. If we can look at the approximate location based on the last approved site plan that was offered up during the second public hearing, the applicant did concede based on the city council's request to extend the screening fence to that point of tangency on the curvature that's roughly depicted there. But nothing was formally ratified. So that's basically a site plan option that was presented for public record, but no formal action has taken place.
But that could take place
Yeah.
tonight.
Absolutely, it's part of the public record.
And what we're working off of right now, just so everybody knows, we're working off of the original SUP, which there has been some things that have been suggested, and as we
Okay.
go through this tonight, we will look at those items and see which ones the council has
All right.
chosen to. Right.
Yeah, I think that's really an important feature of I appreciate the northernmost exit being removed, and a screening fence would solve, I think, 98% of the problems, along with, I do think you should direct the public safety staff to put a stop sign at that intersection where the cul-de-sac's on the other side with a crosswalk because of the children walking across the street there when the bus delivers them. Thank you.
Hey,
Thank
Mayor, can I ask David a question, please?
Sure.
Mr.
Councilman Allen?
I believe what Mr. Brown said was he was bringing the fence down to where the third gate used to be. Is that correct or not?
Yes.
Yeah, there's the site plan that was presented at the last meeting. So you can see the green line extended basically to the point of tangency, just to the back of the building, and that's what they
Okay.
previously agreed to.
And that's what you're saying is important?
What I'm saying is I think it should go to the second entrance, all the way to the second entrance. That's the most important part, obviously, but there's still people across the street. That takes care of my property, but it doesn't take care of everybody's property that's immediately across the street. So I think it should probably come to that second entrance, to the north side of that second entrance.
And how tall a fence was that?
Our screening standard is a 6-foot double-sided decorative fence with 25-foot, with stone columns on 25-foot centers. So it's 6 foot.
I believe, I may be wrong, I don't see Mr. Brown, but I believe he was saying that the cost was a big factor in that.
I
That's why
think he
he's
did
willing to-
too. However, he got some, I believe, you may want to look at Board of Adjustment minutes from Monday night, but I believe that he got some concessions there because of the fact that he was spending extra money on the screening fence. I don't know that for sure. I talked to the Board of Adjustment chairman this afternoon, and it sounded like that was the case. So you might want to look at
Did
that.
she say or he say that he's bringing it all the way down, or?
No, they didn't address the
Okay.
fence, but he was asking for things not to have to be as much masonry and rock on the main building because of the money he was spending on the fence. And I don't know for sure how they ruled, but it sounded like they agreed with him on that.
I had a conversation, but it's been a week or two ago, and I don't think he would want to go any further than what he committed to.
Oh, I don't doubt that that's the case.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I think in light of the neighborhood, it's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is
Fence, the extension of the fence down Sardius was a swap off of dollars of not doing the fence across the back. Is that correct?
That's one thing that we discussed with the applicant and the architect. If the cost of the fence of extending it further to the south is of concern, the original site plan actually had the third drive. And during the negotiations, the mutual agreement of doing away with the third drive, there's some cost savings there in pouring concrete, forming up the curb section, and placing the steel for that third drive that could offset the cost if council so determines to extend the fence further south. So there is some cost savings on some of the modifications that we've already discussed.
One question on the clarification
Hey, let
on
me-
the screening
is
fence.
this on this last discussion?
Yes.
Councilor? Okay.
This clarification, Scott, on the screening fence, it covers every home that faces Sardius, but not covers the homes that are where their sides are on Sardius. Is that correct?
What I can tell you is where that third drive is, the current fence, the last site plan that we saw during the second public hearing actually just stops or terminates just to the left of that X. So in essence, where that proposed drive was that's been eliminated, that's where it would stop. And if you look at the two drives, let me get to the aerial here. There we go. You can see the two drives, so it actually stop or terminate between the second and third house fronting Sardius.
So you still have 3 homes there that face Sardius.
Correct.
And what they're asking for is that the screening fence come on to those homes.
What has been discussed, I guess, to my office is whether or not that screening fence can actually extend further to the south. If you see the backyard, there's a decorative fence of the house fronting the cul-de-sac area
Correct.
that has a defined backyard that's actually screened. There's been some discussion about extending it to that point in order to get at least all the houses fronting Sardius within the screening fence of their front yard.
Would that be Mayor, I got a question.
Go ahead, Councilor Allen.
Would it be a safety, if they bring it up to the last entranceway, would that be a safety issue when they try to pull in and out of there, seeing around the fence?
We actually have site distance requirements from the right-of-way, so when they come in for a building permit, city staff, the building inspection department would actually look at the placement of the fence to make sure that that site distance visibility angle is not infringed upon. And when you look at drives, they're not as onerous as a 25 by 25 van with 2 street intersections. A drive intersection has more of a gentle slope because of the throat and the width of the right-of-way, but we do have those standards, and that fence permit request will actually look at that and correlate that request against that visibility triangle by the building department.
So it may not even could go that far anyway.
Well, generally, if it does, then you, in essence, gently angle it in order to maintain that visibility triangle. But you can come up to that point.
Do you have anybody else in the public that wants to speak on this matter? Okay. Council? I'm sorry.
Ron Ham of Fort Worth with Speed Fabry. We are the design builder of Mike Brown Chrysler Dodge Jeep. And Mike is not here tonight. He is not feeling well. I speak on his behalf. Here's what he's presenting. Let me make sure we're perfectly clear with council. We, of course, originally, when we started this project, we met with staff, all the different departments, and we developed site plan number 1. Staff was very helpful, helped us in many ways. Site plan number 1, of course, raised some issues with the neighbors, which, of course, we reacted to, and we presented site plan number 2 at the last council meeting with what was discussed from the input of the neighbors at that first meeting. I believe we responded, I believe Mike responded very well to it. This site plan number 2, I don't even see site, there, is that it? So site plan number 2 is what was presented at the last council meeting and no action was taken. But Mike has said, this is what he is proposing, this is what he presents, this is what he wants to receive a SUP on. This is all about selling used cars. 70% of all new cars transactions involves a trade-in. So obviously he needs the ability to sell used cars, which we are seeking here tonight, which has never been discussed. So that is why we're here tonight. This is what Mike has proposed. This is what Mike told me this afternoon. This is what he wants to stand upon right here. So this is what we believe is in the best interest of the neighbors and what they said in the first meeting, and allowing Mike Brown the ability to run a dealership like he knows how to run a dealership. I'm not an expert at car dealers. I design them, but I have to rely upon the input of each car dealer to tell me what he needs to be able to best sell new cars and used cars. So we respectfully, on Mike's behalf, request approval of this SUP for used car sales based on site plan number 2 that we presented. Any questions?
Council, any questions?
I'd like Scott to clarify a little bit for me. In the, on the agenda for today tonight is a consideration of an SUP to allow for sales of new/used autos in a heavy commercial district. As I understand it, we're really only talking about used cars there. Then in staff recommendations in the number or in the information that we received, it says staff recommends approval of this SUP to allow for 1, used auto sales, and 2, major auto repair as defined. So is in conjunction with the SUP required for used auto sales, is it also required for major auto repair?
It is in your staff report. You see that under heavy commercial, and this has always been in your staff report, that has been notated, auto repair major. Of course, it's inside. The service activity is inside the building, but it's always been a part of the staff report that the SUP is to allow for major automotive repair in heavy commercial as well as the used car sales lot outside. There's been a lot more discussion regarding, obviously, the outside activity as opposed to the enclosed activity for the automotive repair, which is part of the service presentation by the applicant. It always has been.
So in essence, the SUP has to be issued for 2 items?
Yes.
For the used
It's
cars.
one SUP, but it's for A, used car sales, and B, service inside the building.
Good. Thanks for clarifying. Sure.
Councilman Couch?
Scott, can you tell me what is the lineal footage to extend that fence down to the northern point of the second entrance?
To the northern point, we actually measured 2 distances. If you look at extending, if you look at extending it to the length of the island, to the cul-de-sac, the length of that landscape island, it's about 185 feet. If you look at extending the fence, the distance of lining it up with the stockade fence to the backyard of the house fronting the cul-de-sac, it's about, what, Ron, 85 or 90 feet? Okay. So the depth of that particular lot is about 100 feet, and that particular house has a stockade fence in its backyard.
So if we were to accept the revised plan with a change to extend that fence another 85 feet, that would account for all the houses facing Sardius?
You could, in your motion, if council so determines, consider the SUP as presented by the applicant with a condition that fence be extended from its location on the second site plan to match the rear fence line of the house fronting the cul-de-sac. And that would be about 85 or 90 feet.
Okay, well, given the concerns from the neighborhood, I've spoken with them, and this really comes down to compromise. We have, the intercom system that we really haven't discussed, that I know that the neighborhood would like. The neighborhood would also like the fence that would come down to face all the houses facing Sardius. So I think the compromise is to approve the revised plat with extending that fence 80 feet and leave it at that. And that would be my recommendation.
The only problem we got there, Councilman Couch, is that Mr. Brown has already done some compromise there. He's added 185 feet of fence already. He said he wasn't going to do. I went out there Sunday at 1:30, drove through the whole neighborhood. I didn't even see one child in the yard, my less than the street. Also went out there at 5:30 in the afternoon. I seen one little boy in the front, sitting on the front porch, and no kids out in the street. This is a deal that was there before, was zoned already that way, before any house was ever built there. And I think we're setting an example for businesses coming into Granbury and Hood County, saying, well, if you build next to the neighborhood, they're not going to let you do it. I think Mr. Brown has went above board with what he's asking for. And I'd like to make a motion to prove it with the second vision, bringing the fence down to the original first turnaround or drive-in. Beg pardon?
Site plan number 2. Site plan number 2.
The original site plan as submitted by the applicant.
Well, with the fence on it, though. But it stops where he agreed on last time he was here.
Okay,
Which
so
is there.
that would be the site plan as submitted by the applicant.
Yes, sir. I'd make that a form of a motion.
Okay, before we can make a motion here, council, let's close the public. We have one more person want to speak in the public hearing. If you're speaking without turning in a sheet, if you would, please, when you get done, turn your sheets in so that the secretary has a record of that, please.
Trish Reiner. I live at 203 Sardius Boulevard, and I just want to address the fence issue. Councilman Allen, we've actually already addressed the child issue. We're very happy with what's happened. We've lost that third driveway, and we're willing to let the city determine the stop signs, the speed bumps, and whether the bus stop's ever going to be moved. We don't know if that's ever going to happen, but we're happy.
They will work with you.
We're totally happy with that. The safety of the children, and whether the kids were out there at 1:30 or 5:30, go back the next day. They're going to be back out there, I promise you, especially in the summertime.
In the street?
Mm-hmm. They play in front, and I'll actually, the houses that are not going to be covered, one of those is mine, and one of those is my next door neighbor's. That fence line stops right before my house, so I still will be looking at that dealership. I am absolutely with Mr. Southern on the fact that we can compromise, Mr. Couch, we can compromise on that fence line. We don't need 185 feet. I don't think at any time any of us as neighbors have been trying to tell Mr. Brown how to run his business at all. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to maintain our investments and make our children safe. And we don't need 185 feet of fence. We're fine with not having that amount of fence. We simply want it to cover the extra 2 houses that are left that are not being covered by that screening fence. I think that would be a fair compromise, and I think that I probably speak for the rest of the neighborhood when I say that that would be something that they would agree to as well. That it's just, we're not trying to tell Mr. Brown how to run his business. We just want a little bit of respect. We understand, yes, we moved into a neighborhood with heavy commercial. One thing that I don't know if has been addressed earlier, when we moved in, it was supposed to be a park at one time. Jerry Durant owned it at one time. It was supposed to be a park. It was supposed to be a medical complex. Things change. We get that. We're rolling with the punches. We're just trying to also adapt and have him still be a responsible businessman, and we'll be responsible homeowners. And that's all I have to
Do
say.
y'all have a homeowners association?
No, sir.
Beg pardon?
No, sir.
You don't? Okay.
We have CCNRs, but we don't have an organized homeowners association that we pay into.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else in the public that would like to speak on this matter? If not, I'll close the public hearing. Council, do you have any more concerns or questions?
I'd like to address a couple issues.
Councilman Parson.
Since this came up on council, seems like every time I pass an auto dealership, I'm looking at the number of entrances and where they are and everything. You go through Lampasas, Texas, and there's a car dealership there that has 50 entrances because there's no curb. You can only go in, though, where there's no inventory parked. All the way down to the 2 existing Mike Brown dealerships, which really only have 1 entrance. But the great majority of car dealerships seems to have 2 entrances. There's one in Austin, as a matter of fact, that has 2 entrances with a side street, and there was nothing but fence running down that side street, protecting the residential district next door. I am opposed to the second entrance on Sardis opening into a residential cul-de-sac. From my reading of the architect's letter to the city, when he talked about that, was that with the new redesign of that second entrance, there will be radius enough, there will be width enough for car transport trucks to enter that area. We do need to make sure that we address P&Z's admonishment to make sure that all deliveries come and go on 377 and keep them off of Sardius. Also, I think it's a little much to ask people who've lived in a neighborhood for a number of years to all of a sudden have a 4-way stop with traffic bumps to get into their neighborhood. So I would hope that any motion made tonight would include some kind of provision that all deliveries are made through that. We've talked about the school and moving that. We've already impositioned the people there by moving their school bus pickup. But every morning from 7 to 8, guess where the traffic's going to be coming? It's going to be going in that side entrance, that second entrance into the car dealership, and all the people leaving and going to work, to school, will be faced with that traffic. So my preference would be that we do away with the second entrance and only maintain the one. That is what we have at the Toyota dealership next door. That's one more than the existing other 2 dealerships owned by Mr. Brown have. That's also the same amount that the Kia dealer has. The Chevrolet dealer has 2 entrances on 377, and it has a side entrance, but that side entrance does not open into a residential development. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Allen. Thank you, Councilman Parsons, I'm sorry. Councilman, any more discussion? This time, then, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion.
I have a motion by Councilman Couch. What is your motion?
My motion is to approve the revised site plan with one change, which would bring the fence down another approximately 80 feet. That would cover all homes facing Sardius.
So your motion is to approve site plan number 2 with extending the fence 80 feet?
Approximately 80 feet.
Approximately 80 feet.
To cover all the homes facing Sardius.
Is it 85 or 90?
It's According to the architect, it's closer to 90, but if we can, in our motion, just say what we're trying to accomplish is to align the termination point of the fence with the stockade fence of the house facing the cul-de-sac, then we'll just basically match it where it's basically a matching point across the street.
Can we try that again?
All right, again.
Yeah, if we could say that to extend the fence from the previous site plan number 2 to a point terminating equal to the stockade fence across the street. And we could say the northwest corner of the stockade fence, that'd be perfect.
You could work with that.
Thanks.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to approve the revised site plan with an extension of the fence to the northwest corner of the stockade fence that
Of the
across
lot,
street.
of the lot, of the northern lot fronting the cul-de-sac. We'll write that in the ordinance.
Okay, we have a motion. Councilman Couch, do you want to go ahead and ask that motion with the conditions from P and Z also? All deliveries shall be made utilizing Highway 377 access drive. All access drives shall be gated and locked after business hours, and the northern approach to Sardis shall remain gated at all times.
Yes, I would.
So we have a motion to approve the site plan number 2 with the extension of the fence to cover the southern area of the Sardis Drive with the said revisions that the Planning and Zoning Commission has recommended. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Councilman Parsons. Council, any more discussion?
I've got some here, Mayor.
Councilman Allen.
If I understand you right, your motion is to extend the fence another 80, 90 feet further down.
Correct.
And to me, I said again, Mr. Brown has already extended to 185 feet. And like the lady said, we're not up here trying to tell Mr. Brown how to run his business. We're just trying to tell him how to build this building, which that's our job to do. But I think that's what's wrong with our city right now, is a lot of times we require so much of people to come and put a business in here that we run a lot of them off. And I think he's offered to do that. He said, look at so he didn't care if they want a four-way stop sign. When they come out of their exit, it doesn't come out to a cul-de-sac, Ms. Parcel. It comes out, I believe, out in the street there. He has widened it out. He's done everything he said he'd do. I think he tried to work with it. I'd ask my colleagues up here to vote against this, and let's make a motion and get it done tonight.
I'd also like to clarify one thing if I could.
Go ahead.
The P and Z report on the northern approach on Sardius shall remain gated at all times applied to the third entrance, which has been eliminated. If I'm not,
Right.
as I understand. We're not talking about gating at all times, the second entrance. Everybody understand that, right? Okay.
And we are eliminating that third entryway because this is the original SUP, so Councilman Couch, is that the way you read your motion to also eliminate the third entry?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any more discussion?
I have a question.
Councilperson Rose?
Can you refresh my memory as to what happens, Scott, if we cannot reach a decision in regards to this plan?
Well,
We have a motion, and we're fixing to vote on it, so we'll be able to make that decision as soon as we're done talking about it.
Just turn it down, goes back to another motion.
just like any zoning case, an SUP is like a zoning entitlement. The burden falls on the application to have a majority of approval in order to be passed. If it never gets that majority, then basically the council can dispose of it as they see fit. They can deny it or they can remand it back to P&Z, but it needs to be dispensed with in an appropriate manner, either approved or approved with conditions or disposed of as council sees fit.
Okay, council, we have a motion, we have a second on this. I'm sorry? Councilman Couch, one more question.
Scott, do we have an estimate on that 80 feet of fence?
I got a quote from the architect, and I don't want to misquote him, but if memory serves me correctly, the recollection is about $1,800 to $2,000. Is that correct?
Okay. And you feel that because we've eliminated the third exit, that's pretty much a wash as far as the cost to Mr. Brown?
The cost of the concrete and steel for the approach, and if you look at the site plan there, the throat of the approach goes deep into the property. It's not just a 40-foot deep approach. It actually goes well into the property, so there's substantial cost savings in negating that third approach.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that by close that would actually exceed the cost of the fence?
I would say it's more of a wash.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Scott, I do have one more question for Scott.
Councilman Allen.
Since he's giving advice, do you think by that fence being up there is going to hurt his business or not, sir?
I'm not going to speculate one way or the other.
Yeah.
This is all discussion, deliberation that council has the authority to do. They're the legislative body, so what staff tries to do along with the applicant is to bring the best information forward for you to make your decision.
And I think the staff was trying to accommodate the fact that most dealerships have a exemption from fences and around their business, because that is what their business is, to let the public, let the citizens, let people see what their products are from whatever roadside so that they can shop. So that is why that exemption is there, and as we start putting screening around Mr. Brown's area here, we're denying that. Any more discussion, council? All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, I got an aye from, let's take a show of hands, please, for the ayes. We got 3? 4, I'm sorry. Mr. Parsons, you up? All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
And 1 nay, Mr. Allen. So that motion passes for site plan number 2.
As amended.
Yes. As amended.
As amended.
Very much so. The next item, number 3, is a public hearing regarding a request of Tony and Pam Denton to renew a SUP for 4646 East Highway 377 to allow for the sale of new and used vehicles and boats on a 3.5 acre tract of land situated in the U. Martin Survey, abstract number 384, and consider an ordinance providing for the said SUP. Scott, you want to let us know a little bit about this one?
Thank you, Mayor, Council, Mr. Manager. This is a lot that has been operating as a transmission shop. It fronts US 377, just to the east of 167 North, over by the bank. There's a car lot next to this particular location. The adjoining surrounding properties are largely zone-heavy commercial. I can tell you this particular applicant has been operating this particular SUP for the last 2 rotations. The first rotation, they have 3 years. They were operating without incident for the used car sales on the lot and boats. They got a second SUP based on performance. The council extended it to 5 years. They operated again those 5 years without incident. This time they actually submitted another SUP because it was terming out. They requested another 5 years, but P&Z during their deliberations again found out that they were operating without any reported incident, so they upped it again another 2 years for an accrual of 7 years for the term of the SUP, which will be tied to the property. So this is coming forward to you for TD's transmission for an allowance to have the SUP for used car sales on the lot with two conditions: one, not taking any requisite parking spaces, and two, for a term limit of 7 years. Thank you, Mayor.
This time I'll open the public hearing. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak on this matter? Not, I'll close the public hearing. Council, do you have any questions or concerns?
Where's the fence at around that? They have a 6-foot fence?
They do not.
Oh,
Again, this is, as the mayor mentioned, there's an exception for presentation of new and used car sales where no fence is required.
oh, man. We need a 9-foot fence around that thing.
Okay, Councilman Allen.
Giving you a hard time.
Council, any more discussion? At this time, I'll entertain a motion. I'll entertain a motion to approve this request with the terms of the specific use permit, allowing for the 5 new and used vehicles, and also the sale of display area shall not take up any required parking, and also the SUP shall be good for 7 years. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion by Councilman Perkle. Do I have a second?
I'll second that one.
I have a second by Councilman Parsons. Any more discussion, council? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. That one is approved with the conditions. The next item is a public hearing regarding request of Riley and Linda Stark to replat 1718 Rockview Drive, being lots 10R and 11R, Block 10 of Lakewood Hills Estate. Section 3 as Lot 10R1, Block 10 of Lakewood Hills Estates, Section 3, and consider and approve the said replat. Scott, you want to let us know a little bit about this one?
Mayor, this is a location that actually has 2 recorded pieces of property. What the applicant is proposing to do is replat this recorded 2 lots into a single lot of record. We have letters from the franchise agencies stating that they have no material interest in the utility easements between the 2 lots where the lot line is being abandoned. We have variances associated with this particular plat. We have a variance to 31E regarding our urban standard street and to have the allowance to utilize and maintain the county road standards as they currently exist in the subdivision. We also have a variance to 4.5 and 3.9 of the subdivision ordinance to not upgrade the existing low-pressure sewer line that's in place. All these houses within the subdivision largely have that pressurized line with a grinder pump for each individual living unit to support it. You have a recommendation from your engineer recommending approval of the 2 variances and the replat application as presented by the applicant.
Thank you, Scott. I'll now open the public hearings. Does anybody in the public want to speak on this matter? If not, I'll close the public hearing. Council, is there any questions or concerns pertaining to this item? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve with the variants that are set forward in front of us.
So moved.
I have a motion by Councilman Allen. Do I have a second? I have a second by Councilperson Myers. Any more discussion, council? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. That is approved. Our next item is a request of Evelyn Smith, a public hearing. It's a 2-phase one here, a public hearing regarding a preliminary plat for a 2.055 acre tract of the John Chenoweth Survey, abstract number 118, as Lot 1, Block 1 of the Smith Edition, and consider and approve the said preliminary plat. The property is generally located on Abe's Landing Circle west of Highway 51 and east of Lake Granbury. And also the public hearing regarding a request by the owner and petitioner to de-annex an approximately 0.55 acre portion of land, or 2,376 square feet, situated in the John Chenoweth Survey, abstract number 118, City of Granbury, Texas, being a remainder of the Lot 3R/A, Block 4, Abe's Landing, Phase 1, in addition to the City of Granbury, Texas, and consider and approve an ordinance providing for the said de-annexation. Scott, you want to let us know a little bit about this rather complicated deal?
Absolutely, Mayor. This is a bit of a unique animal. What we have is a piece of property that's in a tract that's currently in survey. It's located just to the northwest of the subdivision that's in the corporate boundary, Abe's Landing. So what had happened was the owner of the tract, believing that the particular piece of property was outside the corporate boundary and wasn't subject to the harvesting of a building permit to build a home, they started construction of a home, which they could do without a building permit. While under construction, it was discovered that there was an encroachment. And if I could turn your attention to the screen, you can see kind of a contact-shaped arc. So the northernmost curvature of the arc is the existing city limit boundary. So when they were actually building the home in the county, they believed, the surveyor or whoever was pulling the string to actually establish where that building footprint is with respect to the property line and the 5-foot utility easement, you can see if you run a string from that one pin to the other under the curvature, it places the building actually outside of the property line and the utility easement. Unfortunately, in this circumstance, there was no straight line between the iron pins, and the city limit as well as the property boundary did in fact have that curvature in it. So when it was discovered, when we actually got to the plumbing permit phase of this, because it's actually tied onto our water, they need a plumbing permit. We inquired about the building footprint and discovered that there was encroachment into the property line and into the city. There's two applications here. One is a preliminary plat application. So what we need to do is, in order to entertain any kind of permit activity, because we are issuing a plumbing permit, they're tying onto our water, we need to plat it out. And the property owner and the building contractor have been both receptive to kind of flesh this out. It's been kind of painstaking for them. I know that the house is under construction, but because it's in survey, because we have variances, they need to go through the preliminary plat and the final plat process. So what you're seeing before you is the preliminary plat showing the building footprint, the adjustment in the property line from its current location. The property to the south is actually owned by FNB Granbury, the First National Bank of Granbury, and they've agreed to actually title swap that portion, that little concave portion, and lower that property line to the south in order to get that encroachment and unhinge the issue of this particular building being over a property line and over a easement. So, long story short is we have a preliminary plat that actually proposes to take the property out of survey. We have a final plat that's actually at the DRC level that's being reviewed. There were two comments that came out of the preliminary plat review process from your DRC. They're highlighted in your staff report. First of which is these are private roads. And when you plat property, you need access to a public road. You can't be landlocked, obviously. So one thing that we'll see prior to the filing of a final plat, and the surveyor is actually doing the research on this, is that when this lot is platted, that there is a ingress-egress allowance to utilize those private roads, because those are private roads within Abe's Landing. They're not public streets, to get to the private road on Highway 51. And the research is going well. So it looks like that's being fleshed out. The second issue, and that's a condition that'll be on the final plat as well, is we have fire hydrant halo coverages for our fire department to go out there and have a certain radius halo coverage requirement from an established hydrant to the lot, and more specifically to the building footprint. So those two issues will come forward to you in the final plat. So P&Z recommended approval of the preliminary plat and the allowance to submit the final plat with the further consideration that those two issues need to be resolved at the time the final plat's hashed out. And I can tell you that those are going pretty well. The other issue is the disannexation. You can see, get back to the drawing here, you can see that from a tax purposes, for an appraisal district purposes, just having that little square footage of the breakfast nook or whatever room that is for the appraisal district would be somewhat of a headache. This property has always been in the county, it's always been in the ETJ. There has been, at least to my knowledge, no discussion about annexing this part of the parent tract into the city. So the applicant, property owner, and builder who discovered this and have been working with county requested this annexation of this at this time in order for the proper recordation and ease of tax ID purposes in order to get it out. Just because of this little overhang, the way the building code reads is because a little portion of it, whether it's 3 square feet out of a 1,800 square foot home, it kicks in plan review requirements by the city, complete building inspection requirements of the foundation, the slab, the framing, everything. So this makes it easier for everybody in order to get that little portion of the building footprint out of it and let them continue with their the proposal to file the final plat and get underway and finish this building. So that's it in a nutshell, Mr. Mayor. If you have any questions, I will be more than happy to entertain any.
Thank you, Scott. At this time, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing up on both the ends of this, on the preliminary plat and also on the petition to de-annex or that portion of that property. Does anybody in the public want to speak on this matter? If not, I'll close the public hearing. Council, do you have any questions or concerns on these two items?
I have a question for Scott.
Councilman Allen.
I drove out there and looked at it. I was at the P&Z meeting, and when I heard it, I thought, gosh, somebody screwed up. I thought it might have been our inspector, and then I found out it wasn't in the city. But the only question I got is, Scott, and I did talk to one guy at First National, they got to replot their lots now, right?
They actually have filed a replat, an amending plat, and because that was a previous filed plat application, and what you're referring to is the lot to the south where they're actually making that swap. They were on the same rotation as this preliminary plat, Councilman Allen. We could handle that because it had water and sewer and no variances as a staff. So we staff to approve it. It's actually sitting on our counter with all the signatures, which saves them the time and money in order to get that adjustment on the bank side tended to. And we're very fortunate that both parties have agreed that since we have a pending amending plat downstairs that's already been processed, we want to dovetail these two together. So when the final plat comes through on this northern property, we'll go file them at the same time, and the title transfer of that little .055 acre portion will be swapped at that time altogether.
That's great. The only thing I was thinking about, if they got ready to build some more townhouses or something, by cutting that off, is that going to cut any of their building square footage off or anything like that?
The property owner, the title holder, the bank, knows that that's actually a zone PD multifamily, and they're, I would suspect, aware of the building footprint requirements and how all those 5 lots to the south of this particular lot fit together. It's not developed, as you're mentioning, so they know what they're getting up, and I would think that part of that cost consideration is the price of whatever private negotiations are on their side.
It's a nice home, I tell you that.
I do want to mention one other thing, Mr. Mayor, is the disannexation. This is considered a sparsely populated, so we only have a requirement by the charter and the local government code to hold this hearing and consider it. It's a disannexation by petition. We only have to have one reading for fulfilling both the charter requirements and the local government code, chapter 43, disannexation requirements in this one hearing. So after this discussion tonight, it will basically be disannexed. There's one provision in chapter 43 that basically says we coordinate with the appraisal district regarding any kind of prorated taxes that are due the city for that year, but that will be handled between the city and the appraisal district.
Thank you, Scott. Is there anybody in the public that wishes to, we've already done that. Okay, nobody in the public wants to speak. Council, is there any more discussion on these items? If not, I'll entertain a motion to recommend the approval for the preliminary plat with the conditions that the owner or the consultant shall address his lot's access rights on the private street prior to filing the final plat for the DRC review, and that the owner or his consultant shall coordinate with the city engineer and fire inspector regarding the fire hydrant halo coverage requirements prior to filing the final plat for DRC review. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion by Councilman Couch. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Councilperson Myers. Any more discussion, council?
I have a couple of questions. The fire hydrant won't be at any cost to the city?
No, that's under our subdivision ordinance requirements. When they plat out property, the burden falls on the applicant to show that they're well within that coverage halo. You can see, actually, our coverage halo requirements is all of every portion of every residential lot.
They're not going to be longer.
They're gonna be
in the
longer.
City, right? I mean,
So what we expect to see in this instance, Councilman Parsons, is a partial variance to allow for the coverage of the building itself. And I can tell you, Kevin's looking at access to get from the hydrant where it may be placed to get to suppressing any kind of incident that happens at the building for this particular location.
am I mistaken? I mean, we were building a house that potentially would have no access?
That, I can tell you, there was a previous covenant for this particular property owner, Miss Smith, as well as Burton Burks, that originally owned the parent tract. There was an easement that served both of those. However, that easement does not align with the private road that's in place, but the access elements of that transferred over to the private road that's in place. So the bones of it are there for access for this property. The only thing that we did in our review is to make sure that that covenant transferred and is tied to the property and is transferable, not just to Smith, but whoever this particular lot and house gets flipped to.
Thank you.
Is that driveway that goes all the way down back to, I think it's Abe's Landing, the main drag, is that going to be their driveway?
Their driveway will actually extend through this flag lot and basically come out to the, along the frontage here, and then they, just like any other resident in Abe's Landing, they will get access off of this particular private road 251. So where their building footprint is on this lot, they will have a fairly long extended drive to their structure.
If you look to the lot to the right, is that in the city limits? Right,
Go back to the picture.
right there. If you look to the right of the road,
Mhm.
is that in the city limits?
Yes.
Straight across from there is in the city limits?
Yes, I believe it is. Let me see if I can get a map here. Yes, so where that Abe's Landing and that temporary turnaround, that little shaded bubble, that's across from the subject's lot's fronting where that temporary turnaround is shown on this map. That is in the city.
It's not a turnaround down there. They had never put it in.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
Go back to the next viewing there, Scott. The last one you had. No.
There we go.
So where is the nearest fire hydrant that is on Dave's Landing right now?
The nearest fire hydrant that we can see is at the intersection.
Okay.
So the intersection that actually disappears to the bottom lower right-hand corner.
Mhm.
So in all likelihood, in order to get a partial variance through, the installation of a fire hydrant is going to need to take place in order to file some, cover some protection for this house. Again, our city engineer and our fire inspector are looking into it. If they place it just by the length of this flag lot, we're probably looking at a partial variance, but Kevin's input's going to be very valuable on the placement of that, the location of the drive, and the access through the drive on how he can best serve the house if something ever happens.
Thank you, Scott. Council, any more discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The preliminary plat is approved. Our next item, we will entertain a motion to approve the request by the owner and the petitioner to de-annex the approximate .055 acre portion of the land situated in the John Chenoweth Survey Abstract Number 118, City of Granbury, Texas. Do I have a motion on that one? I have a motion by Councilperson Myers. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Councilman Couch. Any more discussion, council? All in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. That the annexation is approved. Our next item is a public hearing regarding the request of Vista Property Company for a variance to Section 5.6 of the City of Granbury subdivision ordinance to allow early release of building permits prior to the completion and acceptance of public improvements. The property is located west of the intersection of Meander Road and Highway 377 East. Scott, you want to talk about that one?
Mr. Mayor, this is the location where the larger retail building footprint will be located just behind Taco Casa. This is the building footprint to support the proposed Ross Marshalls that we're negotiating, or that Vista Properties negotiating in order to land at this particular site. If you recall, we saw the preliminary plat and a PIA in January. So council has given the green light to the developer to initiate and start the water and the sewer improvements for this particular property to get the construction underway. However, the continued negotiation with the franchises at this particular location have extended from that time to the point where we are now. Because it took a couple of months, well, about 3 or 4 months, the developers, and they think that they have a solidified agreement with the franchises, they feel that they need to kind of expedite and get things going while we're in the golden point of construction activity before it gets too hot. So they're asking for an early limited permit in order to get going. So what that entails, and it's done very well in the letter from Mr. Trace Strevey in your agenda packet, stating that they would like to have the contractor, while they're commencing construction on the public water and sewer lines, to also be able to pull some plumbing permits and foundation permits. So this is pretty much limited to the subgrade work. Our ordinance currently basically says they don't want the different contractors on top of each other. They like to see the public improvements be installed, inspected, and accepted before the other contractors come in on top of the building site and possibly allow for some cross-contamination. But in this particular case, the contractor, I believe, is one and the same, and they can handle both the public and the private improvements. You'll also see a letter from the city engineer, and the public works director supports this as well, that they are supporting the variance to allow for the limited building permit. So that's in a nutshell. Basically, they are asking for an early limited permit to actually have the contractor do both public and private, and the private work is limited to those elements that are referred to in Mr. Trace's letter to city staff, April 11th, 2014. Again, our engineer has looked over this letter and finds it supportable, and city staff recommend approval of the limited variance as presented by the applicant.
Thank you, Scott. I'll now open the public hearing. Does anybody in the public want to talk on this issue? Close the public hearing. Council, is there any discussion or concerns on this issue? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the variance as set by the applicant.
So moved.
Got a motion by Councilman Allen. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Councilman Parsons. Council, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. That one is approved. At this time, I'll now declare that the Granbury City Council will convene into open session and that all members are present. The City Council will now go into closed session pursuant to the provisions of Texas Government Code in accordance to the authority contained in the following sections. Section 551.071, consultation with our attorney, and Section 551.074, personnel. We will return. Council is now reconvened in open session. There was no action taken. At this time, we'll move on to item number 7 to discuss and consider the following resolutions. The first one being a resolution authorizing the city attorney to bring a compensation lawsuit to acquire fee simple title into the 33.06 acre parcel of land located in the Malham County Land Survey abstract number 348 in Granbury, Hood County, Texas, for the construction of a runway for Granbury Regional Airport. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion to move that the City Council of the City of Granbury authorize the use of the power of eminent domain to acquire the necessary property for the construction, installation, and maintenance for the runway airport for the following property: a 33.06 acre parcel with the Milam County School Land Survey, abstract number 348, in Granbury, Hood County, Texas, and deeded to John E. Westoff, trustee of Durant Grantor Trust A and Durant Grantor Trust B, and move to adopt the resolution as presented.
So moved.
I have a motion by Councilman Couch.
Second.
I have a second by Councilman Allen. More discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. That track is approved. The next one being track 2, I'll entertain a motion that the City Council of the City of Granbury authorize the use of the power of eminent domain to acquire the necessary property for the construction, installation, and maintenance of a runway for the following property: a 133.379 acre parcel in the Milam County School Land Survey, abstract number 348, in Granbury, Hood County, Texas, and deeded to Michael L. Harris, and further moved the resolution as presented. Do I have a motion on that one? I have a motion by Councilman Parsons. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Councilperson Myers. Any more discussion, council? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. That one is approved. The next one being track 2A, entertain a motion to move that the City Council of the City of Granbury authorizes the use of the power of eminent domain to acquire the necessary property for the construction, installation, and maintenance of an airport runway for the following property: a 5.000 acre parcel of the Milam County School Land Survey, abstract number 348, in Granbury, Hood County, Texas, and deeded to Mr. Billy Harris, and further moved to adopt the resolution as presented. Do I have a motion on that one?
So moved.
I have a motion by Councilman Allen.
Second.
I have a second by Councilman Couch. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Track 2A is approved. The next one being track 3. Entertain the motion that the City Council of the City of Granbury authorize the use of the power of eminent domain to acquire the necessary property for the construction, installation, and maintenance of an airport runway on the following property: a 90.946 acre parcel in the Milam County School Land Survey, abstract number 348, in Granbury, Hood County, Texas, and deeded to Craig Meyer and Scott Meyer, trustees of the Meyer Family Trust, and further moved to adopt the resolution as presented. Do I have a motion on track number 3?
So moved.
I have a motion by Councilman Couch. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Councilman Allen. Any more discussion, council? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Track 3 is approved. The next one being track 4, entertain the motion that the City Council of the City of Granbury authorizes the use of power of eminent domain to acquire the necessary property for the construction and installation and maintenance of the airport runway on the following property: a 6.963 acre parcel in the Milam County School Land Survey, abstract number 348, in Granbury, Hood County, Texas, and deeded to Craig Meyer and Scott Meyer, trustees of the Meyer Family Trust, and further moved to adopt the resolution as presented. Do I have a motion on track 4?
So moved.
I have a motion by Councilman Perkle. Have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Councilperson Myers. Any more discussion, council? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. That track 4 is approved. At this time, if there's no further discussion at the council meeting is adjourned.